Maria Santos wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished scrubbing the marble floors of the downtown office building. At 52, her knees ached from years of cleaning, but she never complained. Every dollar she earned went toward keeping her small apartment and sending whatever she could to her sister's family back in El Salvador. The evening shift was almost over when she noticed an elegant envelope that had fallen behind one of the reception desks. The cream-colored paper felt expensive between her weathered fingers. Charity Gala for Children's Education Fund was written in gold lettering across the front. Maria couldn't read English very well, but she recognized some words. She was about to throw it away when the security guard, Mr. Peterson, walked by. "What you got there, Maria?" he asked kindly. Mr. Peterson was one of the few people in the building who actually knew her name and treated her with respect. "I find this paper," she said in her broken English, handing him the envelope. Mr. Peterson's eyes widened as he read the invitation. "Maria, this is an invitation to the biggest charity event in the city. It's next week at the Grand Ballroom. Only the richest people get invited to this." Maria shook her head. "Not for me. I just clean lady." But Mr. Peterson looked at her thoughtfully. "You know what, Maria? This invitation doesn't have a name on it. And you work harder than anyone I know. You deserve a nice evening out." "I no have dress for fancy party," Maria protested, but something in her heart stirred. She had never been to anything elegant in her entire life. "My wife works at a dress shop downtown," Mr. Peterson said with a smile. "She's been trying to get rid of some beautiful dresses that didn't sell. I bet she'd love to help you find something perfect." 3 days later, Maria found herself standing in front of a mirror in Mrs. Peterson's dress shop, barely recognizing herself. The navy blue evening gown was simple but elegant, and Mrs. Peterson had insisted on doing her hair and makeup. For the first time in years, Maria felt beautiful. "You look absolutely stunning," Mrs. Peterson said, tears in her eyes. "Every woman deserves to feel this special at least once in her life." Maria touched the small cross necklace around her neck, the only thing she had left from her mother. She thought about her own children, who she had given up for adoption 25 years ago when she was just 17 and couldn't provide for them. The memory still brought tears to her eyes, but she had made peace with her decision long ago. The night of the gala, Maria stood outside the grand ballroom, her heart pounding. Luxury cars dropped off women in designer gowns and men in expensive tuxedos. She almost turned around 3 times, but Mr. Peterson's encouraging words echoed in her mind, "You belong there just as much as anyone else." Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. Maria had never seen such wealth and beauty in one place. She quietly found a seat at a table in the back, trying to make herself invisible while taking in the magnificent sight. The evening began with a presentation about the charity's work providing education for underprivileged children. Maria's heart swelled as she watched videos of children learning to read and write, remembering her own struggles with education. She had dropped out of school at 14 to work and help her family survive. During dinner, Maria noticed how some guests seemed bored, checking their phones or talking loudly during the speeches about helping children. It made her sad to see people take such important work so lightly when she knew firsthand how education could change a life. As the evening progressed, Maria felt increasingly out of place. The conversations around her were about stock markets, vacation homes, and expensive art. She understood very little and felt her confidence fading. She was considering leaving early when the auction began. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the host, "our final auction item tonight is a week-long scholarship program that will provide intensive tutoring for 10 underprivileged children. The bidding starts at $5,000. Maria watched in amazement as wealthy guests casually bid tens of thousands of dollars. She thought about the children who would benefit and wished she had anything to contribute. The bidding reached $50,000, and Maria felt tears in her eyes thinking about how much good that money would do. Suddenly, a young man in an expensive tuxedo raised his hand. $100,000, he said clearly. The room fell silent. Maria turned to see who had made such a generous bid and gasped. The young man was tall with dark hair and kind eyes, probably in his late 20s. Something about him seemed familiar, though she was sure she had never seen him before. "Sold to the gentleman in the front," announced the auctioneer, and the room erupted in applause. After the auction, Maria needed some air. She stepped out onto the ballroom's terrace, grateful for the cool night breeze. The city lights twinkled below, and, for a moment, she allowed herself to dream about what her life might have been like if circumstances had been different. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Maria turned to find the young man who had won the auction standing nearby. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a deep brown, almost black, and, when he smiled, dimples appeared in his cheeks. "Yes, very pretty," Maria replied softly, suddenly self-conscious about her accent. "I'm Alexander," he said, extending his hand. "Alexander Whitmore." Maria recognized the last name immediately. The Whitmores were one of the wealthiest families in the city, known for their business empire and philanthropy. She shook his hand nervously. "Maria Santos," she said quietly. "It's wonderful to meet you, Maria. Are you enjoying the evening?" Something in his voice was gentle and genuine, unlike the superficial politeness she had encountered from other guests. "Yes, very much. You are very kind to give money for children." Alexander's expression grew serious. "Education changed my life. I was adopted when I was very young, and my adoptive parents gave me every opportunity. I believe every child deserves that same chance." The word adopted hit Maria like a lightning bolt. She studied his face more carefully, and her heart began to race. Those eyes, that smile, the dimples, features she remembered from a tiny baby she had held for only a few precious hours 25 years ago. "You were adopted?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, when I was just a few days old. I have wonderful parents, but I've always wondered about my birth mother. I hope she's doing well, wherever she is." Maria's hands began to tremble. Could this possibly be her son? The baby she had given birth to in a charity hospital and held for just one perfect hour before making the most difficult decision of her life? Do you know anything about her?" Maria asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Alexander's expression grew wistful. "Not much. I know she was very young and made an incredibly brave decision to give me a chance at a better life. I've thought about trying to find her, but I don't want to disrupt her life if she's moved on." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes. She wanted to tell him everything, but fear held her back. What if he was disappointed? What if he was ashamed of her? She was just a cleaning lady, and he was clearly from a world of privilege and success. "I think," she said carefully, "that she probably thinks about you every day and hopes you are happy." "Do you really think so?" Alexander asked, and Maria could hear the vulnerability in his voice. "I am sure," she whispered. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking out at the city lights. Maria felt a connection to this young man that went beyond words, and she could sense that he felt something too, though he couldn't possibly know what it was. "Would you like to dance?" Alexander asked suddenly. "I know the evening is almost over, but there's still music playing inside." Maria's heart fluttered. "I do not know how to dance fancy dances." "That's okay," Alexander said with that beautiful smile. "I'll teach you." As they walked back into the ballroom, Maria felt as if she were floating. The universe had somehow brought her face to face with the child she had never stopped loving, and, though he didn't know who she was, she could feel the bond between them as strong as ever. The band was playing a slow, gentle song as Alexander led her onto the dance floor. He placed one hand gently on her waist and took her hand with the other, guiding her through simple steps. "You're doing perfectly," he said softly. Maria looked up into his eyes and saw the same gentle soul she had glimpsed in that tiny baby 25 years ago. Tears rolled down her cheeks as they swayed to the music. "Are you all right?" Alexander asked with concern. "Yes," Maria whispered. "I am just very happy." As the song ended, Alexander walked her back to her table. "I hope I'll see you again, Maria. It was truly a pleasure meeting you." "Yes," she said, knowing she would treasure this memory forever, even if it was all she would ever have. Thank you for the dance." After he left, Maria sat alone at her table, her heart full of joy and sorrow. She had met her son, had danced with him, had seen what a wonderful man he had become. But he was part of a world she could never belong to, and she was just a stranger to him. As beautiful as this evening had been, she knew it was time to return to her real life and cherish this moment as the gift it was. Little did she know that this magical evening was only the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. Alexander Whitmore couldn't stop thinking about Maria Santos. 3 days had passed since the charity gala, but her face remained etched in his mind. There had been something so familiar about her, something that stirred emotions he couldn't quite understand. Her gentle voice, her kind eyes, and the way she had looked at him during their dance, it all felt like a piece of a puzzle he had been trying to solve his entire life. Sitting in his corner office overlooking the city, Alexander stared at the business reports on his desk but couldn't concentrate. At 27, he had everything most people dreamed of: a successful career in his adoptive father's company, a penthouse apartment, and more money than he could ever spend. But there had always been an emptiness inside him, a longing to understand where he came from. His adoptive parents, Robert and Catherine Whitmore, had given him a wonderful life filled with love, opportunity, and privilege. They had never hidden the fact that he was adopted, and they had always supported his desire to learn about his birth family. But every attempt to find information had led to dead ends. "Mr. Whitmore?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your mother is here to see you." Alexander smiled. Catherine Whitmore was the only mother he had ever known, and, despite their lack of biological connection, she loved him as fiercely as any mother could love her child. "Alexander, darling," Catherine said as she entered his office, her arms full of shopping bags. At 58, she was still elegant and graceful, her silver hair perfectly styled and her designer clothes impeccable. "I was shopping nearby and thought I'd stop by." "I'm always happy to see you, Mom," Alexander said, giving her a warm hug. But Catherine noticed something in his expression. "What's troubling you?" she asked, settling into the chair across from his desk with the intuition that only a mother could have. Alexander hesitated. He had shared his feelings about wanting to find his birth mother before, and, while his parents were supportive, he knew it sometimes hurt them to think he felt something was missing from his life. "It's about the gala the other night," he began slowly. "I met someone, a woman named Maria Santos. There was something about her that felt so familiar, but I can't explain it." Catherine studied her son's face carefully. She had always known this day might come, when Alexander's search for his birth family would intensify. "Tell me about her." "She was working as a cleaning lady, but she was at the gala. We talked for a while, and when I mentioned being adopted, she seemed, I don't know, emotional about it. And when we danced, I felt this connection that I've never experienced before." Catherine's heart began to beat faster. Over the years, she had carefully kept the few pieces of information they had about Alexander's birth mother, waiting for the day when he might need them. The timing, the name, the emotional reaction, could this possibly be more than coincidence? "Alexander," Catherine said gently, "there's something I need to tell you. Something your father and I have been waiting to share until you were ready." Alexander looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out a small, worn envelope. "When we adopted you, the agency gave us this. It's a letter from your birth mother. She left it for you in case you ever wanted to find her." Alexander's hands shook as he took the envelope. After 27 years of wondering, he might finally have answers. "Why didn't you tell me about this before? You were so young when you first started asking questions, and then you went through that difficult period in high school where you were angry about being adopted. We wanted to wait until you were emotionally ready to handle whatever you might find." With trembling fingers, Alexander opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was shaky, as if written by someone very young or very nervous. "My dear baby, I am only 17 years old and I cannot give you the life you deserve. I love you more than you will ever know, but love is not enough. I am giving you to a family who can give you everything I cannot. Please know that you are wanted and loved. I will think of you every day and pray that you have a happy life. Your birth mother, Maria Elena Santos. The letter slipped from Alexander's hands as the words sank in. Maria Santos. The woman from the Gala shared the same name as his birth mother. Mom, he whispered, looking up at Catherine with wide eyes. The woman I met, her name is Maria Santos. Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. Oh, Alexander. Do you think, could it really be her? There's only one way to find out, Catherine said softly. But, are you prepared for what you might discover? It's been 27 years. Her life might be very different now. Alexander stood up and walked to the window, his mind racing. I have to know. I've been searching for her my whole life, and if there's even a chance that she was right there in front of me. Then, we'll help you find her, Catherine said firmly. Your father and I want you to have the answers you're looking for. The next morning, Alexander hired a private investigator named David Chen, who specialized in adoption searches and family reunification. David was thorough and discreet, exactly what Alexander needed. I'll need to be very careful, David explained during their first meeting. If this woman is your birth mother, approaching her incorrectly could be traumatic for both of you. We need to verify her identity first, then figure out the best way to make contact if she's open to it. It took David 3 days to track down Maria's employment records and confirm that she was indeed the right age and had given birth to a son in the same hospital where Alexander was born. The timeline matched perfectly. Mr. Whitmore, David said when he called with the results, I'm confident we've found her. Maria Elena Santos, currently employed as a cleaning lady at several downtown buildings. She's never married and has no other children on record. She lives alone in a small apartment in the East District. Alexander's heart pounded. After all these years of wondering, his birth mother was living just 20 minutes away from his penthouse. She was alone, working multiple cleaning jobs to survive, while he lived in luxury. The thought filled him with a mixture of joy and guilt. There's something else, David continued. I spoke to some of her co-workers, and they all describe her as incredibly kind and hard-working. She sends money regularly to family in El Salvador, even though she clearly doesn't have much herself. And, Mr. Whitmore, several people mentioned that she always becomes emotional when children are mentioned. One woman said Maria once told her that she gave up a baby years ago and never stopped hoping he was happy. Tears filled Alexander's eyes. All these years, while he had been wondering about her, she had been thinking about him too. What do you recommend for making contact? Alexander asked. That's delicate. She might be afraid that you're angry with her for giving you up, or she might worry that she'll disrupt your life. I suggest starting slowly, maybe arranging to run into her naturally rather than showing up at her door. Alexander thought about this carefully. He remembered how nervous Maria had seemed at the gala, how she had said she didn't belong there. If he approached her as Alexander Whitmore, the wealthy businessman, she might be too intimidated to have an honest conversation with him. An idea began to form in his mind. David, can you find out where she works and what her schedule is? Over the next week, Alexander learned everything he could about Maria's life. She worked at 3 different office buildings, cleaning each one on alternate days. She took 2 buses to get from one job to another. She shopped at a small grocery store in her neighborhood and attended Mass at St. Rosa's Catholic Church every Sunday morning. Alexander began to understand the courage it must have taken for her to attend the gala. She had stepped completely out of her world and into his, and, somehow, fate had brought them together for that one perfect evening. But now he faced the biggest challenge of his life: how to tell the woman who had given him life that he had found her, and that he didn't blame her for her choice, he was grateful for it. Alexander decided to start by simply observing her from a distance, trying to work up the courage to approach her. On a Tuesday evening, he waited outside the office building where she worked the night shift. When she emerged at 10 o'clock, he followed at a safe distance as she walked to the bus stop. Watching her wait for the bus in the chilly evening air, her shoulders tired from a long day of work, Alexander felt an overwhelming surge of love and protectiveness. This woman had carried him for 9 months, given birth to him, and then made the most selfless decision imaginable to ensure he had a better life than she could provide. And now, 27 years later, she was still struggling while he lived in comfort. As Maria's bus approached, Alexander made a decision. He couldn't wait any longer. Tomorrow, he would find a way to speak with her, to let her know that her sacrifice had not been in vain, and that the baby she had given up had grown into a man who would spend the rest of his life trying to honor the love she had shown him. But first, he needed to figure out how to tell her that her son had been dancing with her all along, and that the moment she had feared and hoped for 27 years was finally about to happen. Alexander drove home that night with his heart full of anticipation and terror. Tomorrow, he would take the first step toward changing both their lives forever. He just prayed that Maria would be ready for the truth that was about to unfold. 3 Maria Santos knelt on the cold marble floor of the Whitmore corporate building, scrubbing away scuff marks with the same dedication she brought to every job. It was Thursday evening, and the building was nearly empty except for security guards and a few executives working late. She hummed softly to herself as she worked, a habit that helped make the long hours pass more quickly. For the past week, Maria had been unable to stop thinking about the charity gala and her dance with Alexander Whitmore. Every night, she relived those precious moments when she had held her son in her arms without him knowing who she was. The bittersweet memory brought both joy and heartache. She had seen what a wonderful man he had become, but she also knew that their worlds were so different that their paths would never cross again. As she moved her cleaning cart down the hallway toward the executive offices, Maria noticed that the light was still on in one of the corner offices. She could see the nameplate on the door, Alexander Whitmore, Vice President. Her heart began to race as she realized this was her son's office. Maria stood frozen outside the door, torn between the desire to catch another glimpse of him and the fear of being discovered. Through the glass, she could see him sitting at his desk, his head in his hands as if he were troubled by something. Her maternal instincts kicked in, and she felt an overwhelming urge to comfort him, even though he would never know why. Alexander looked up and saw a figure in the hallway. Even though the cleaning lady's back was turned to him, something about her posture seemed familiar. He watched as she hesitated outside his office, and suddenly, his heart began to pound. Could it possibly be Maria? Taking a deep breath, Alexander stood up and walked to his door. "Excuse me," he called out softly. Maria turned around slowly, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. When she saw Alexander's face, she felt as if all the air had been sucked out of her lungs. "Maria?" Alexander said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maria Santos?" She nodded, unable to speak. Standing there in her cleaning uniform with her cart beside her, she felt the gulf between their worlds more acutely than ever. I didn't know you worked here," Alexander said, though the truth was that he had known for days and had been trying to work up the courage to approach her. "I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Whitmore," Maria said quickly, starting to push her cart away. "I just clean and go." "Wait," Alexander said urgently. "Please don't go. I was hoping I might see you again." Maria stopped, her hands gripping the cart handle tightly. "You want to see me?" "Yes," Alexander said, his heart pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "Maria, can we talk? There's something I need to tell you." The vulnerability in his voice made Maria look up at him. The same kindness she had seen at the gala was there, but now there was something else, an intensity that made her feel as if he could see straight into her soul. "I have to work," she said quietly. "It's after hours. No one else is here. Please, just for a few minutes?" Against her better judgment, Maria found herself nodding. Alexander gestured toward his office, and she followed him inside, leaving her cart in the hallway. The office was elegant and spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Maria had never been inside such a luxurious space. "Please, sit down," Alexander said, indicating one of the leather chairs in front of his desk. Maria perched nervously on the edge of the chair, her hands folded in her lap. "What you want to talk about?" Alexander sat down across from her, and, for a moment, neither of them spoke. He was trying to find the words for the most important conversation of his life, while she was wondering why this successful young man would want to spend time with someone like her. "Maria," Alexander began slowly, "at the gala, you asked me about being adopted." "Yes," she whispered. "I told you that I've always wondered about my birth mother, that I hoped she was doing well wherever she was." Maria nodded, remembering every word of that conversation. "What I didn't tell you," Alexander continued, his voice growing stronger, "is that I've been searching for her my entire life. And, recently, I found some information about her." Maria's heart began to race. Where was this conversation leading? Alexander reached into his desk drawer and pulled out the letter his adoptive mother had given him. "This is a letter my birth mother wrote when she gave me up for adoption 27 years ago." With trembling hands, he held it out to Maria. She stared at the paper but didn't reach for it. "Would you like to read it?" Alexander asked gently. Maria shook her head. "I no read English so good." "Then, let me read it to you," Alexander said, his voice becoming thick with emotion. "My dear baby, I am only 17 years old and I cannot give you the life you deserve. I love you more than you will ever know, but love is not enough. I am giving you to a family who can give you everything I cannot. Please know that you are wanted and loved. I will think of you every day and pray that you have a happy life. Your birth mother, Maria Elena Santos." The letter fell from Alexander's hands as he looked into Maria's eyes. She was staring at him in shock, tears streaming down her face. "Maria," Alexander said softly, "is there something you want to tell me?" Maria's world was spinning. After 27 years of wondering and hoping and praying, her son was sitting right in front of her, asking her to tell him the truth she had carried in her heart every single day. She began, but the words wouldn't come. How could she explain the depth of her love, the agony of her decision, the way she had never stopped thinking about him? "It's okay," Alexander said, moving to kneel beside her chair. "I know who you are." Maria looked into his eyes and saw not judgment or anger, but pure love. "You know?" "You're my mother," Alexander said, taking her hands in his. "You're the woman who gave me life and then gave me a chance at a better future. You're the person I've been looking for my whole life." Maria broke down completely then, sobbing as 27 years of suppressed emotion poured out of her. "I so sorry," she cried. "I so sorry I give you away. I love you so much, but I have nothing to give you." "Sorry?" Alexander said, his own tears flowing freely now. "Mom, you have nothing to be sorry for. You gave me everything. You gave me to parents who could love me and educate me and give me opportunities you couldn't provide. You made the most selfless decision anyone could make. I think about you every day," Maria sobbed. "Every birthday, every Christmas, I wonder if you are happy, if you are healthy, if you know that your mama love you." "I know," Alexander whispered, pulling her into his arms. "I've always known somehow. And I've been looking for you because I wanted to tell you that I understand why you did what you did, and I'm not angry. I'm grateful." They held each other and cried together, mother and son reunited after nearly 3 decades apart. All the pain and longing and love that had been buried for so long came flooding out in that embrace. "I can't believe it's really you," Alexander said, pulling back to look at her face. "When we danced at the gala, I felt something, but I never imagined." "I know it was you the moment I see you," Maria said through her tears. "You have the same eyes as when you were baby. I hold you for 1 hour before they take you away, and I memorize everything about your face. You recognize me?" "A mother never forget her child," Maria said simply. "But I think you are ashamed of me, so I say nothing." "Ashamed of you?" Alexander said incredulously. "Mom, I'm proud of you. Do you know how brave you were? How strong? You were just 17, and you made an impossible decision because you wanted what was best for me." Maria touched his face gently, as if she couldn't quite believe he was real. "You are so handsome, so successful. You become everything I dreamed for you. Because of you," Alexander said firmly. "Everything I am is because of the choice you made. You didn't give me away, Mom. You gave me a future. They talked for hours that night, sharing 27 years of memories and experiences. Maria told him about her life in El Salvador, about coming to America as a young woman, about the difficult circumstances that led to her pregnancy. Alexander told her about his childhood, his education, his adoptive parents' love and support. I want you to meet them, Alexander said as the night grew late. My parents, Robert and Catherine. They've always wanted to thank the woman who gave them the greatest gift of their lives. Maria looked frightened. They are very important people. I am just cleaning lady. You are my mother, Alexander said firmly. And that makes you the most important person in the world to them. As they finally prepared to leave the office building together, Alexander turned to Maria with a serious expression. Mom, I know this is overwhelming, and I don't want to pressure you. But I hope you'll let me be part of your life now. I want to take care of you the way you would have taken care of me if circumstances had been different. Maria shook her head. I don't want your money. I just want to know my son. It's not about money, Alexander said. It's about family. It's about making up for lost time. Please, don't disappear from my life again. Maria looked at this wonderful man she had brought into the world, and, for the first time in 27 years, she allowed herself to hope that she might finally have the one thing she had always dreamed of, a chance to be a mother to her child. I never disappear again, she promised, and Alexander knew that both their lives had just changed forever. The days following their reunion were a whirlwind of emotions for both Maria and Alexander. After 27 years of separation, they found themselves navigating the delicate process of building a relationship while dealing with two very different worlds that seemed impossible to bridge. Alexander had immediately wanted to move Maria out of her small apartment and into better housing, but she had firmly refused. I work all my life to be independent, she told him during their second meeting at a small cafe near her neighborhood. I don't want to be burden. You could never be a burden, Alexander insisted, frustrated by her stubbornness. You're my mother. I want to help you. Help me you can, Maria said gently, but not with money. Help me by being my son. They met every evening after Maria finished her cleaning jobs. Alexander would pick her up in his car and they would drive around the city, talking and learning about each other. Slowly, the initial shock and overwhelming emotions gave way to genuine curiosity about each other's lives. Maria was fascinated by Alexander's education and career. She would listen with wide eyes as he explained his work, asking simple questions that showed how eager she was to understand his world. You help people with their businesses, she asked one evening as they sat by the harbor watching the sunset. In a way, Alexander explained. I help companies make better decisions about investments and growth strategies. That sounds very important, Maria said with obvious pride. You are smart like I always hope you would be. Tell me about El Salvador, Alexander said. I want to know about where I come from. Maria's face lit up as she shared stories about her homeland, the beautiful mountains, the close-knit family relationships, the struggles that had driven so many people to leave everything behind in search of better opportunities. Your grandfather, he worked in the coffee fields his whole life, she told him. He never learned to read, but he teach me that honest work is never shameful. I wish I could have met him, Alexander said. He died 5 years ago, Maria said sadly. But he know about you. I tell my family that I have son in America, and we always pray for you. Your grandfather, he say one day God will bring you back to us. As the weeks passed, Alexander struggled with how to integrate Maria into his life. His adoptive parents had been wonderfully supportive, immediately welcoming Maria when Alexander brought her to meet them. Catherine had embraced Maria warmly, tears in her eyes as she thanked her for the gift of Alexander's life. I never thank you properly, Catherine had said to Maria. You gave us the most precious thing in the world. You give him what I cannot, Maria had replied. You make him good man. Robert Whitmore, Alexander's adoptive father, had been equally gracious. You'll always have a place in our family, he told Maria. Alexander's happiness is our happiness. But, outside of his immediate family, Alexander found it difficult to know how to introduce Maria to his world. His friends and colleagues moved in circles of wealth and privilege that seemed light years away from Maria's life of quiet dignity and hard work. The first real test came when Alexander's best friend, James Harrison, invited him to a dinner party at his family's estate. Alexander had been attending these gatherings for years, but now he found himself looking at his privileged lifestyle through different eyes. "You've been distracted lately," James observed as they stood on the terrace sipping expensive wine while uniformed servers circulated with hors d'oeuvres. "Everything all right?" Alexander hesitated. James was his oldest friend, but he came from the same privileged background that Alexander had always taken for granted. How could he explain that he was questioning everything about his life since finding his birth mother? "I found my birth mother," Alexander said finally. James looked shocked. "Wow, that's incredible. What's she like? Where has she been all these years?" She's wonderful," Alexander said carefully. "She's been working as a cleaning lady, trying to survive and help her family back in El Salvador." The change in James's expression was subtle but unmistakable. "A cleaning lady? That must be challenging for you." "What do you mean?" Alexander asked, though he knew exactly what James meant. "Well, I just mean it might be difficult to relate to someone from such a different background." "What could you possibly have in common?" Alexander felt a flash of anger. "We have everything in common. She's my mother." But James's reaction stuck with him, making him realize how many people in his social circle would view Maria the same way. The thought made him furious, but it also made him protective of her in a way he had never expected. Meanwhile, Maria was dealing with her own challenges. Her co-workers at the cleaning company had noticed her frequent absences and distracted behavior. Rosa Martinez, who had worked alongside Maria for 3 years, finally confronted her. "Maria, what's going on with you?" Rosa asked as they cleaned an office building together. "You're different lately." Happy but also worried. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Maria had been keeping her reunion with Alexander secret, afraid that people wouldn't believe her or would think she was making it up. But Rosa was her closest friend, and Maria desperately needed someone to talk to. "Rosa," she said quietly, checking to make sure no one else was around, "I found my son." Rosa stopped mopping and stared at her. "Your son? The baby you gave up years ago?" Maria nodded, tears springing to her eyes. "He found me. He's a good man, Rosa. Successful and kind and everything I dreamed he would be." "Dios mío," Rosa whispered. "Where has he been? What does he do?" "He's a businessman. He has money, education, important job." Maria's voice filled with pride. "But, Rosa, I don't know how to be his mother. We live in different worlds." "Love doesn't care about different worlds," Rosa said firmly. "You carried him in your heart for 27 years. That's all that matters." But Maria's fears were real. Every time she met Alexander, she was acutely aware of their different backgrounds. He would arrive in his expensive car wearing clothes that cost more than she made in a month, and though he never made her feel inferior, she couldn't escape the awareness of the gap between them. The situation came to a head when Alexander invited Maria to attend a company function with him. It was a casual cocktail party for employees and their families, and Alexander thought it would be a good way to introduce Maria to his professional life gradually. "I don't know," Maria said when he asked her. "What if I say something wrong? What if I embarrass you?" "You could never embarrass me," Alexander said firmly. "I want people to know that I found my mother and that I'm proud of her." The night of the party, Alexander picked Maria up at her apartment. She was wearing her best dress, a simple black outfit that Mrs. Peterson had helped her choose, and had spent hours getting ready. But, when they arrived at the elegant venue, Maria's confidence evaporated. The party was filled with well-dressed professionals and their families, all speaking casually about topics that Maria knew nothing about: vacation homes, private schools, investment strategies. Alexander stayed close to her side, introducing her as his mother with obvious pride, but Maria could see the surprise and sometimes barely concealed disdain in people's faces when they learned what she did for a living. The breaking point came when one of Alexander's colleagues, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, made a thoughtless comment. "It must be so inspiring," she said to Maria with false sweetness, "to see how far your son has risen above his circumstances." The implication was clear, that Alexander had succeeded despite having a mother like Maria, rather than because of her sacrifice and love. Maria smiled politely, but Alexander saw the hurt in her eyes and felt his temper flare. "Actually," Alexander said coldly, "my success is entirely because of my mother's circumstances. She made the most selfless decision imaginable when she was just 17 years old, giving up her child so he could have opportunities she couldn't provide. Everything I've achieved is a testament to her love and strength." Jennifer looked flustered, realizing she had offended him, but the damage was done. Maria had heard the message loud and clear. In this world, she would always be seen as the obstacle Alexander had overcome, not the foundation of his success. Later that night, as Alexander drove Maria home, she was unusually quiet. "Are you okay?" he asked, though he knew she wasn't. "Alexander," she said softly, "maybe this is too hard." "What's too hard?" "This. Us. You have your life, and it's beautiful life. I don't want to make it complicated for you." Alexander pulled over and turned to face her. "Mom, do you think I care what Jennifer Walsh thinks? Do you think I care what any of them think?" "You should care," Maria said sadly. "These are your people. This is your world. I am just cleaning lady who gave you away." "Stop," Alexander said firmly. "Don't ever say that again. You are not just anything. You are my mother. You are the woman who gave me life and, then, gave me the greatest gift possible, a chance to succeed. Without you, none of this exists." Maria looked at her son, seeing the fierce love and determination in his eyes. "But people will always see me as different." "Then, we'll find new people," Alexander said simply. "Mom, I spent 27 years without you. I'm not going to let other people's narrow-mindedness steal another day away from us." As they sat in the car outside Maria's apartment building, both of them realized that their reunion was about more than just finding each other. They were embarking on a journey to create a new kind of family, one that bridged two worlds and redefined what success really meant. "Will you come to church with me on Sunday?" Maria asked suddenly. "I want to light a candle and thank God for bringing you back to me." "I would love that," Alexander said, and, for the first time since the party, Maria smiled. As Alexander watched her walk into her building, he made a decision. He was done apologizing for his mother or trying to make her fit into a world that couldn't appreciate her worth. Instead, he was going to learn to see the world through her eyes, and, maybe in the process, he would discover what really mattered in life. 6 months after their reunion, Alexander Whitmore stood before the board of directors of Whitmore Enterprises, presenting a proposal that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. The polished conference room was filled with some of the most powerful business leaders in the city, but Alexander's attention was focused on the small woman sitting quietly in the back corner. Maria Santos wore a simple navy dress that Catherine Whitmore had helped her choose, and, though she looked nervous, her eyes shone with pride as she watched her son address the room with confidence and passion. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, "I'm here today to propose the creation of the Santos Foundation for Educational Opportunity, a non-profit organization dedicated to providing educational support and job training for underprivileged immigrants and their families." The murmur that ran through the room was mixed. Some board members looked intrigued, while others appeared skeptical. Alexander had expected this reaction. "The foundation would be funded initially with $10 million from my personal trust fund," he continued, "and would focus on 3 main areas: English language education, vocational training, and small business development loans." Robert Whitmore, Alexander's adoptive father and the company's chairman, leaned forward in his chair. "This is quite an ambitious proposal, Alexander. What inspired this particular focus?" Alexander glanced at Maria, who gave him an encouraging nod. Over the past months, she had shared countless stories about her struggles as an immigrant, the barriers she faced due to language and lack of opportunity, and the dreams she had been forced to abandon. Each story had deepened Alexander's understanding of the challenges faced by people like his birth mother. I've learned recently, Alexander said carefully, that there are thousands of people in our city who work multiple jobs just to survive, despite having skills and intelligence that could contribute so much more to our community if they had the right opportunities. I want to help break down those barriers. One of the board members, Harold Chen, raised his hand. Have you identified specific programs or models that have proven successful? Yes, Alexander replied, clicking to his next slide. I've spent the last 4 months researching successful programs in other cities, and I've also been working with community leaders to understand what would be most effective here. What he didn't mention was that many of those community leaders were Maria's co-workers and friends from her neighborhood. Alexander had spent countless evenings in Maria's small apartment, listening to Rosa Martinez talk about her dream of opening a catering business, or hearing Miguel Santos, no relation to Maria, describe his struggle to get his engineering credentials recognized in the United States. Through Maria, Alexander had discovered a whole community of hardworking, talented people whose potential was being wasted because they lacked access to opportunities he had always taken for granted. The presentation continued for another 20 minutes, with Alexander outlining detailed budgets, timelines, and success metrics. When he finished, the room was quiet for a moment. It's a well-researched proposal, admitted Jennifer Walsh, the same woman who had made the thoughtless comment about Maria months earlier. Jennifer had noticeably changed her attitude toward both Alexander and Maria after witnessing Alexander's passionate defense of his mother and his growing involvement in immigrant community issues. I have one question, said Margaret Foster, the board's longest-serving member. This is clearly a personal project for you, Alexander. While we appreciate your passion, we need to ensure that Whitmore Enterprises is supporting initiatives that align with our business objectives. Alexander had been prepared for this question. Mrs. Foster, this foundation isn't just about charity. It's about developing human capital. When we help immigrants develop their skills and start businesses, we're creating potential clients, partners, and employees. We're strengthening the economic foundation of our entire community. The discussion that followed was lengthy and sometimes heated, but, in the end, the board voted unanimously to support the foundation. As the meeting concluded, Maria approached Alexander with tears in her eyes. Mijo, she whispered, using the Spanish endearment for my son that had become natural between them, I am so proud of you. We did this together, Mom, Alexander replied. This foundation exists because you taught me what real strength and dignity look like. The months that followed were busy with setting up the foundation, hiring staff, and developing programs. Alexander split his time between his regular business responsibilities and his work with the foundation, but he found the latter far more fulfilling than anything he had ever done. Maria had initially resisted Alexander's suggestion that she become involved with the foundation beyond the inspiration for its creation. I don't know anything about running organizations, she had protested. But, you know the community, Alexander had countered. You understand what people need because you've lived it. We need that perspective. Eventually, Maria agreed to serve as a community liaison, helping to identify potential program participants and ensuring that the foundation's services were actually reaching the people who needed them most. It was a role she embraced with enthusiasm, and Alexander was amazed to watch her confidence grow as she realized how much her experience and insights were valued. The foundation's first graduation ceremony took place exactly 1 year after Alexander and Maria's reunion at the charity gala. 43 people had completed various programs, some had earned their GEDs, others had completed vocational training, and several had successfully launched small businesses with foundation loans. Alexander stood at the podium in the community center where the ceremony was being held, looking out at an audience that looked nothing like the wealthy crowd at the charity gala where this journey had begun. The graduates sat in the front rows with their families, their faces glowing with pride and hope. Behind them sat community members, foundation staff, and supporters. A year ago, Alexander began, I thought I understood what success meant. I measured it in dollars and achievements, in recognition and status. But I've learned that true success is much simpler and much more profound than that. He paused, finding Maria in the audience. She was sitting with Rosa Martinez and several other women from her neighborhood, all of whom had become like family to Alexander over the past year. success is about using whatever advantages you've been given to lift others up. It's about recognizing that our individual achievements are meaningless unless they contribute to the well-being of our community. And it's about understanding that the measure of a person's worth has nothing to do with their bank account or their job title, and everything to do with their character, their courage, and their capacity to love. The applause that followed was warm and heartfelt. After the ceremony, as guests mingled over coffee and cake provided by Rosa's newly successful catering business, Alexander found himself in conversation with Miguel Santos, whose engineering credentials had been recognized through one of the foundation's programs. Miguel was now working for a construction firm and had just been promoted to project manager. "Mr. Alexander," Miguel said, "I want to thank you for believing in us. This program changed my whole family's life." "It's not about me," Alexander replied. "This foundation exists because my mother taught me that everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential." Later that evening, Alexander and Maria sat on the small balcony of her apartment, which she had finally agreed to let him help her improve. The view was not as spectacular as the one from his penthouse, but Alexander had come to prefer the energy and authenticity of this neighborhood to the isolated luxury of his previous life. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found each other?" Maria asked as they watched the sunset over the city. "Every day," Alexander admitted. "I think I would have kept succeeding in business, kept accumulating wealth, but I would have missed the most important part of life." "What part is that?" "Understanding what really matters. You gave me life twice, Mom. Once when you brought me into this world, and again when you showed me how to live in it meaningfully." Maria reached over and took his hand. "I think about that night at the gala sometimes. I was so afraid that you would be ashamed of me. And now I know that you are ashamed of me," Maria said with a mischievous smile. Alexander looked startled. "What?" "Mom, that's not you are ashamed that it took you 27 years to find such an amazing mother," Maria finished, laughing at his expression. Alexander laughed too, marveling at how his serious, worried mother had gradually revealed a wonderful sense of humor as their relationship deepened. "Actually," he said, "I'm grateful it took 27 years. Why? Because I needed to be old enough and wise enough to appreciate what an incredible woman my mother is. If I had found you when I was younger, I might not have been ready to learn everything you had to teach me." As they sat together in comfortable silence, both Maria and Alexander reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought them to this moment. A charity gala, a chance encounter, a moment of recognition, such small things that had led to such profound changes. The foundation continued to grow and expand its programs. Alexander eventually left his corporate position to run the foundation full-time, a decision that surprised many of his former colleagues but felt completely natural to him. Maria became a beloved figure in the immigrant community, known for her warmth, practical wisdom, and ability to help people navigate complex systems. 3 years after their reunion, Alexander surprised Maria with a special gift. He had arranged for her sister's family to immigrate to the United States, using his connections and resources to help them through the complex process legally and safely. "Why you do this?" Maria asked through tears as she embraced her sister Elena at the airport. "Because family shouldn't be separated by borders," Alexander replied. "And because you taught me that love means action, not just words." The Santos family, Maria and Alexander, Elena and her children, and the extended family of friends and community members they had gathered around them, celebrated that night with a dinner that combined recipes from El Salvador with dishes from the diverse immigrant community they now served. As Alexander looked around the table at the faces of people who had become his true family, he realized that his mother's greatest gift hadn't been giving him up for adoption, it had been showing him, through her example, what unconditional love actually looked like. The charity gala where their journey had begun had been about wealthy people helping the less fortunate. But what Alexander had learned was that the help had flowed in the opposite direction. The woman society saw as needy had been the one with the most to give, and her son, for all his privilege and education, had been the one who truly needed help understanding what it meant to live a meaningful life. Now, as they planned for the foundation's expansion and looked forward to welcoming Elena's children into their American family, Alexander and Maria knew that their story was just beginning. They had found each other across years and worlds and circumstances that should have kept them apart, and, in doing so, they had discovered that love really could bridge any gap and overcome any obstacle. The struggling housekeeper and the billionaire's son had become simply what they had always been meant to be, a mother and son who loved each other unconditionally and used that love as a foundation to build something beautiful in the world.